Hello, Jets fans, and welcome to Rich Sports Talk, your home for all the latest and greatest on the New York Jets. If you're new to the channel, make sure to like and subscribe. It's easy, it's right down there. Click it. Make sure you don't miss any of our latest episodes, including future mock drafts, breakdowns of free agency as we move through this oh so important offseason. But also, don't forget to check our community page for recent polls to check out what videos might be coming on the channel next. And if you want to take us in your pocket, you can always listen to us wherever podcasts are available. So we are in the heat of the NFL Combine, and I'm going to do something a little bit different. Everyone's talking about the quarterbacks, and I get it. And if you guys want me to break down the quarterbacks, if you want me to reveal my top 50 big board, let me know in the comments, and I will certainly do so. But I wanted to think about an interesting solution that isn't really being talked about a lot for the Jets. And I get it. This isn't their biggest need. I get it. It's not the sexiest position because it's the offensive line. But you know me. If you know anything about this channel, you know I love talking about those buffet busters, the offensive line. And the big thing with me is I see the value of the offensive line. I don't have to tell you how many arguments on this channel we got in last year over Olu Fashanu compared to Brock Bowers. Now, the Jets, let's talk about the tackle position. Because in all likelihood, Morgan Moses will no longer be a Jet. According to Connor Hughes, Morgan Moses is going to leave, which is upsetting because I think Morgan Moses would have been a perfect plug and let someone play behind him to gain experience. But Morgan Moses, again, is in his 30s, has had injury concerns the last 2 years, and let's be honest, is probably trying to get 1 or 2 more years and chase the ring. I think I would not be shocked, especially given their tackle issues, if Morgan Moses is a right tackle for the Kansas City Chiefs next year. So again, if Chief fans are here and listening, that could be a possible fill-in at your right tackle. So the big question becomes, how do you address this offensive line? Now, keep in mind, this is going to be a much different system. This is going to be a system that I think is going to rely a lot more on brute strength. I think it's going to be more of a power run style of a system. And I do think that the tackle position is going to be very important. I mean, look at Detroit. I mean, Detroit arguably has the best tackle combination in the league. And I was thinking, because I've gone into some debates and I've seen the debates online about should the Jets take a tackle at 7? When should the Jets take a tackle in the draft? But I was thinking about something. Sometimes solutions can come from within the house. And one of the things I thought about really hard was, could the Jets play a little offensive line roulette? Could they mix and match a little bit in order to address this problem? So my proposal is do something the Jets have done before. That's move Elijah Vera Tucker to right tackle and move Joe Tippmann to right guard. Now, I know that the first reaction is there's going to be a lot of vitriol because a lot of people, and I get it, AVT was hurt at the tackle position. He played really well at the guard position last year, and you don't want to bounce him around too much. But I think that there are pros to the moves compared to the cons. Let me start off with this. I think that this is an intriguing offensive line draft, but I don't think it had the depth that last year's did. And the strength of this offensive line class is the interior. It's not the exterior. It's not the tackle position. Even some of the top tackles, a lot of experts believe that they would be better off transitioning into guard because they don't have the wingspan or the foot speed. So here's the interesting thing, and I'll start with AVT, and then I'll move to Joe Tippmann. AVT is at a crucial crossroads in his career. AVT is going to be 27. And if I'm AVT, I would actually be open to playing right tackle because tackles get paid more money. If you're a great offensive lineman, you will get paid, but tackles get just a little bit more lettuce. He's going to a crucial contract season. And I think for him, if he wants to test free agency, if he wants to go to free agency after this year, being a right tackle is definitely going to command a lot more. So it makes sense financially for him. And look, when he played tackle, I thought he was a very good right tackle. I thought he's very good at the point of attack. I think he's got the foot speed to play the right tackle position. And honestly, I would feel a lot better if he was the starting right tackle because I know what I'm getting at the right tackle position, as opposed to hoping a rookie can hold down a tackle spot. I feel a lot better about a rookie on the interior figuring it out as opposed to someone along the edge. And I think AVT could be a really good right tackle. He's very good in the run game. I think he could really set the tone at the right tackle position. And this is a move that to me makes a lot of sense, but it's more so with Joe Tippmann because I was saying this a lot in his rookie year was I think Joe Tippmann should have stayed at guard. Now, again, I saw a dramatic improvement at the center position throughout the season last year. But there are two things that work against Tippmann, I think, long-term being a center. Number one, I think Tippmann has shown he's had issues snapping. Again, there were times last year he corrected it, but seems to be an issue that hasn't fully gone away. But the biggest thing I look for with Joe Tippmann is his size. Joe Tippmann is a big dude. He's 6'6". And when you're that big, it's very difficult at the center position to really gain leverage because especially on the inside, you're dealing with a lot of leverage. You're dealing with defensive tackles getting underneath you. And while I did see a stark improvement from Joe Tippmann, I thought he played his best at guard. And if you look, by the end of the season, according to PFF or to the football grades, he was ranked as one of the top 7 centers. When he was playing guard as a rookie, week in and week out, he was a top 5 rated guard. And his ability to pull, get outside, and get down the field, I think he has the potential to be a really great guard. And if you remember when he was coming out during the draft process, a lot of people thought that with Tippmann, he'd be better off at guard because of the size. Now, why do I bring this up? Because I think it's easier to find a interior offensive lineman. Now, I know a lot of people are going to say, well, you have a center. A center is a key position. You've talked about the center position all the time. Why are you just throwing him out? I'm not throwing him out at center, but I do think that you can find intriguing options, especially in this draft. And I also think the Jets are going to look at the interior offensive line. Some of the meetings that they've had already have been John Thomas, an interior offensive lineman from New Haven. They've interviewed Jared Hufford and Mason Miller, offensive guards and tackles from Iowa State, North Dakota State. And they met with Charles Grant at the Combine today, who's the offensive lineman from William and Mary. You also look at the board. There's some decent centers. Gray Zabel from North Dakota State is a prospect that I do think could be there, especially at the center position early. He could be a day 2 pick. Jared Wilson could be there. He's the center from Georgia. I think he's an intriguing option. And then you have guards that could kick inside to center and make the position. The thing with this is I know it's hard to find a really good center, but it's harder to find a really good tackle. And there's some intriguing interior offensive linemen. Marcus Embo from Purdue. You have Tate Radledge from Georgia. I mean, you have some guys that can play the guard position and kick inside to center. And again, if you want to make sure that your comments jump to the front of the line and make sure that yours is read, and you also just want to make a donation to the channel, make sure to use that new super chat feature down below. So I feel like with this solution, and again, it comes down to this coaching staff. Maybe Aaron Glenn views AVT as a better right tackle and Tippmann as a better guard than center. The big thing with this regime now is you have to keep in mind, they did not draft these guys, and they're going to put them where they feel is the best solution. Now, granted, last year with AVT, I think they just wanted to keep him comfortable and not ping-pong him all over the offensive line. But I do think if you came to him in this offseason and say, look, we really like you as a right guard, but we think you're going to make more money and be a better right tackle, I think AVT would be open for it. Now, with Joe Tippmann, it might be a little bit trickier, but if you can convince him that he could be an all-pro guard potentially and be a great offensive guard, I think that's something you have to consider. The Jets need to build this offensive line, and sometimes having that versatility to move around and find a better position could fit in a different scheme. I think a great example, and I know I'm going to give Jet fans a migraine when I mention this, Mekhi Becton, who, again, I never felt was a tackle, especially after his first 2 seasons. You see why he's worked as a guard is because he is physical at the point of attack. He can really bulldoze people. But the big thing is he's not asked to go against twitchy edge rushers or guys with great foot speed. You have AVT now a year off of the Achilles. I think last year it was smart to put him at guard. He has a year to recover. He's going to be 27. I really think that it could be a really interesting move because I look at the right tackle prospects right now. I don't see the Jets spending a ton of money in this free agent market. And again, I don't think it's a really great free agent market for the tackle class anyways. I see this tackle class as I don't see them taking a guy in the first round. But then you look at rounds 2 through 3, there's some interesting players. But if you are starting them day one as your right tackle, I would be a little bit more concerned. I would rather invest in a rookie who could be a really good interior offensive lineman and move AVT out to the right tackle position. Now, maybe there's some world where with this new system, this new scheme, maybe Max Mitchell or Carter Warren eventually becomes a tackle replacement or a starting tackle. But at this point, they are more liabilities. Now, granted, scheme change could change all of that. Maybe they'll find themselves. Maybe they'll be able to figure it out and flourish in the new scheme. But go the other way, it could be even more difficult. They could look even more like guys that don't belong on a 53-man roster like they did the last year. So this is an interesting problem, and it's not the biggest problem for the Jets, but considering how bad the offensive line has been and how the Jets have played this tackle roulette, and it's unfortunate because what seemed like their best tackle combination in years is now all of a sudden out the window because Morgan Moses is likely not coming back. This to me is a very key thing because even though Olu was great last year as a left tackle, I still think it would help this team if you can find another right tackle. And for me, when I weighed the options, especially because I really do not believe this team's going to draft a tackle in the first round, to me, AVT makes the most sense to be this team's right tackle, but I'd also would consider moving Joe Tippmann over to guard. So let's get into the comments again. Super chat to jump to the front of the line. Campbell is a safe choice, but again, he played left tackle. You would have to talk to him too, because with some of these guys, and saw with Becton, they have in their head they're a left tackle. And if he doesn't want to play the right tackle position, that's out. And look, I would feel better, hypothetically, if the Jets, let's say, punted back to like 10 or 11 and got Campbell in that range. Is there a chance he's gone before that? Absolutely. But Campbell, to me, it's also going to be very intriguing too, because I get this feeling that they want their right tackle to have a bit of a nasty streak in this system. And while he is very good at the point of attack, he's more that traditional left tackle that you're looking for. I think they're looking for more of like the bulldozing type of set the tempo right tackle. And I guess Wild Wave will have to invest potentially in a computer if that happens on draft night. So prayers to Wild Wave's computer. Sharon McLean. Trapillo can play right tackle and could be around in the third round. Now, I really like Lint also from UConn as a right tackle. The thing with Trapillo is I could see him being there. I understand him being there in the third round. The one thing I just worry about is if I'm starting, especially let's play if they go with a rookie, if they go that route and they basically decide to get a rookie, I'm not sure if I feel really comfortable with that rookie, with a third round right tackle. Because again, even though it's not the end of the world to have a young tackle, there's going to be a lot of growing pains. And look, I get why Trapillo is intriguing, especially with that NFL bloodline with his dad. You look to, like, I do really like him. The thing with him, though, is he is very good at holding down and pass blocking, but he's not really a tempo setter in the run blocking. And again, he's a really big dude, 6'8". And when you start seeing, especially when you start getting the tackles over the 6'6" mark, it gets trickier in terms of the leverage, especially if you get like some of those smaller 6'1", 6'2", twitchy defensive ends. They become hard to get leverage on. I would also look at like one guy I kind of like a lot, especially on day again. He probably wouldn't. You'd have to trade up for him in early day 3. Would be Ursary from Minnesota, 6'6", 340 pounds. I mean, he is basically a tree with legs. And while there are some things he needs to clean up, I mean, he is just a massive bulldozer. And I could see him being a big people mover at right tackle. I mean, the other thing too is if we're talking top tackles, I mean, I wouldn't also rule out Membo. If you're talking tackles in the first round, Membo is a decent pass blocker, but if you really look, he was the guy that they leaned on in the running game. Like when they needed to run the football, they basically ran behind 79 and they basically ran behind his horsepower. They basically ran behind him and he just moved people. And he's a 332 pounder. I mean, he has about another 15 pounds on Will Campbell. So if we're talking first round tackles, I wouldn't throw that out there. I wouldn't completely rule that out. Let's see. Trade back to 12. Get extra second. Draft Warren, Tyleik Williams. If you trade back to 12, which is with Dallas, that would be an intriguing possibility. I don't think you'd get have them trade back and get picked for next year, the 2026 draft, because I think it's just such a deeper draft. But if you were looking at like roughly the point system, Dallas, that pick's worth 1,200 points. The Jets pick currently worth 1,500. So a round 3 pick is going to be in the 200 valuation mark. Where round 2, I have to even check. I'm not even sure if Dallas has a second round pick. Let me check. Yeah, they have 44. I mean, in that case, you're probably going to have to swap either a fourth round pick to get that second round pick. But there's a lot of different ones as well. Now we're getting to the thick of it with the tackle debates here in the chat right now as we get some new comments. Again, guys, if you want to guarantee that you jump to the front of the line, make sure to use that super chat feature so that you definitely get to the front of the line and make sure that your comment is definitely read. But there is definitely Cowboys are a weird team too. Like I'm just curious who they're coming up for. Like that's who I wonder who they are actually coming up for in this scenario. So let me get to some more of your comments here. Jonah Monahan from USC is a lay-around guy that's played almost every spot on the O-line. Yeah, like I feel he transitions a little bit better to the inside, but that is definitely someone I am definitely looking for. I think there's some good Yackle prospects in the second round, or we can see Max Mitchell could do with another coach. Mitchell, I'm not sure what he can do, but I do think, and I do love this Rico the Pup with a great reference to Membo. He basically is a whiskey barrel with legs. I do think that is a good one. Yeah, I just look at what you're saying, Wild Wave. For me, I would rather get someone new in here because don't forget too, it's a weird process too. Like you want to see what Warren and you want to see what Mitchell could be with the new coach. But at the same time, it's going to be a completely new scheme. And it's basically you have a new chef in the kitchen with Aaron Glenn. And you're basically inherited a cupboard of ingredients from Joe Douglas and Robert Saleh. And I do think he's going to want, like Bill Parcells always says, you want to shop for the groceries. So I get this feeling that especially when you look at the Jets, I think they want to be more dominant in the trenches on both sides of the ball. Now, Olu, I think is fine because you want a nimble left tackle, but I almost feel like if the Jets do draft an offensive lineman, they're going to want a bit more of a nasty streak. Because let's be honest, Morgan Moses was the tone setter. He was the guy that they wanted to run behind when, and I'll get to Sharon's comment in a sec, when they needed to get the ball moving. So I just feel like you're missing a right tackle there. You need to get some of the bit of a nasty streak. And like, there's some good pass blockers. And again, I trust me, it's a passing league. I don't hate you getting a pass blocker, but especially your right tackle, I think you're going to look for a little bit more of a tone setter, basically. You want someone that's really going to establish a good, nasty streak out there. I mean, another interesting guy could be Josh Connerly if he somehow slips into round 2. He's a little bit underdeveloped, but he can really move. Again, he's someone that can really get to that second level in the run game. I'm curious to see what the Jets look for there. But the other thing, too, is there's a lot of really good guys in that early second round. The key, too, is you got to find the right person who you really think can be there. So I do think another guy, Donovan Jackson out of Ohio State, but he's going to be a left tackle. The worst tape for him, though, was Abdul Carter. But again, Abdul Carter is probably the best. It's him and Travis Hunter for the two best players in this draft class. So, I mean, it's one thing, and I get that, why it was tough. Sharon, I don't know about that. I would hope that would be the case. But the thing with that is I'm just not sure what teams in front of them are going to want Ginty. I could see the Cowboys doing that in a perfect world. I would love that. But so Courtney is keeping, looks like receipts. I want to know what in regards Courtney is keeping the receipts to. Is it a certain player? Is it something that I said? I definitely want to hear from you. So as again, my phone keeps blowing up at the worst time. Rico, I still on the Anthony Belton hype train. I know he played left tackle, but I think he's a right tackle league, and he's definitely a tone setter. Belton could be an intriguing player as well. I think Belton's one of those guys too, where it's just I could see. The question is how high they go, though, is because you want to get good value in the draft. And with Belton, I could see him potentially being there. Now, the other thing, too, is you got to look at how the board falls. And I'm very curious to see what the Jets value to, because the one thing we knew with Joe Douglas and Robert Saleh was they were guys that would really lean on the RAS score, where I do think that you look at Belton, I would love him as a day 3 pick. But the thing I worry about with him, though, is he does struggle in a bit of pass protection. Like you said, very good run blocker. There's a lot of rawness to his game. To me, he's someone, and this is the tricky part. There's some guys that I really like in this draft to sit, and if I could groom them into the tackle position and project them within 2 years, but really have them behind Moses for a year, I'd feel a lot more comfortable. Heck, if you want to move AVT to tackle this year and groom someone, like let's say you double dip on the O-line, one's an interior, one's an exterior, but the exterior player, like, look, we really like them. We like the intangibles, but let's see how AVT does. Because for all we know, there's certain players I think this regime will definitely want to keep. I think Sauce and Garrett are no-brainers. I think Jermaine will be a guy that they'll want to keep. But will this team and this regime want to pay Breece Hall when he's up for a contract? Will this team want to pay AVT? Will they value AVT? Like, there's certain guys on this team in the next year or two that I would not be surprised that they get moved around. Maybe, like I said, they like Joe Tittman, but they like him better as a guard, and he becomes a starting guard for this team. And if he's a starting guard for 6 or 8 years, that's great. Maybe this team views AVT as a liability with his injury history, especially in the lower body. Maybe they're a team that's going to look at AVT and go, we'll see what we can get out of him this year, but long term, we don't want to overpay him at 27 years old when he's had 2 season-ending injuries. And granted, he played a full season last year, but they're worried he's not going to last well in a second contract. So there's always something to keep an eye on, especially with turnover. And like I said, it's really for us as a fan base, and for me and what I do, this is as much as a learning process as anything. Because when you get new people involved, you have to see what they value. Like after a year or two, you got a pretty good picture of what Joe Douglas looked for in a player, how he looked at negotiations, how he looked at free agency, how he looked at the draft, what kind of traits he was looking for in certain players. Same thing with Robert Saleh. Right now, we have an idea of what Aaron Glenn's looking for based on where he came from and based on the staff he's put together. But a lot of this is guesses. For all we know, it could be a complete 180 in terms of how he builds this team. For all we know, maybe 2 of the first 3 picks in this draft are all trenches. And I know that won't be sexy. That won't be liked, especially by a lot of fans. But that's how they view it. They're like, look, we got to build these trenches before anything. And maybe you guys are right. Maybe they will take a tackle at 7. That's a possibility because maybe they look at it and go, we like Olu. We like Tittman, but we don't necessarily love AVT. For all we know, maybe this team isn't huge on John Simpson. I mean, again, John Simpson played very well last year. He fit in the system last year, but maybe in this new system, he doesn't fit as well. So we will definitely have to see. Who do you think will be the first free agent we sign? Sharon, are you talking about keeping for the Jets or out in free agency? And to be honest, I don't know. I think it will be very telling. I almost get the feeling that their first free agent will be their highest profile free agent. Because again, you see free agency in waves. The first tier free agents tend to go early. I'm guessing, if I had to guess, if there's a position where I think they're going to spend money in free agency, I could see them going for the second tier receiver. I could see them making a splash in defensive line. I could also see safety. I think safety is a position where they might make a splash. But again, we've also seen in recent years the safety market has kind of become the running back market of defense, where it just seems like guys wait it out and just get 1 or 2 year contracts. So I'm curious to see how they attack. And I think that's a good question, but I think it's too early to tell. Every guy I don't like necessarily want starting the first year if possible. I mean, I buy into a Trace guy if they're a short-term plan, maybe the right tackle from Texas, but value matters, like you said. And look, I like him too. And the thing is, in a perfect world, I would have loved Morgan Moses to stay, draft some guy on day 2, early day 3 to develop. But if he isn't there, I think you have to look at what's best for this team. And my opinion, and I could be wrong, could be AVT at right tackle. I'm over lineman, man. Just sign somebody, draft Sanders. He seems like he's going to drop to 7. If Sanders is there at 7, I would consider it. I'm telling you this. I'm not training up for either of these quarterbacks. Like, if I was to put them on a board last year, these guys are not in the top 6 last year. I mean, Bo Nix would be better. If Bo Nix was in this draft, he would be the first quarterback selected. These are good quarterbacks, but here's the problem with this quarterback class. I think it really has to be discussed. If you are an NFC team, I could see you getting to the playoffs potentially with these quarterbacks. If you're in the AFC, if they reach their potential, does Sanders or Ward get you past Mahomes or Allen or Burrow? Like, you have to be projecting that they're not only good, but they're going to be elite. And I think they're going to be very good quarterbacks. But And I do think Drones Nix was a better quarterback, higher accuracy rating. I think he's a better athlete than people give credit for. That again, Sanders, I do think there's a lot of things I like. I like the leadership he brings. I don't think he's got a great arm in terms of his accuracy. I don't think he's got a big enough arm to push the football down the field. And I think he's a good athlete, but not a great athlete. And look, maybe Sanders can be an elite quarterback. Maybe I'll come back here and again, I'll eat crow drones with that. I think with these quarterbacks, it's all about the fit. And if they like Sanders a lot, if they like Ward and they feel that they're a franchise quarterback, sure. Again, it's their evaluation. It's not mine. It's not anyone else's in the media. It's all about what this Jet front office feels like. But I would say this, if you are going to draft someone in this draft, the big thing you have to do is look at it and go, can they compete with the elite in the AFC? The best move would be to trade Breece because we can't extend Sauce Garrett, JJ, and Breece. I can see a world where you could franchise tag him. Breece is tricky because I love what he brings to the table. And I do think, especially if you bring in a young quarterback, having a great running back to hand off. But a lot of it comes down to, is there another running back that they value in this class? Do they see Braylon Allen and Isaiah Davis as pieces in this offense? And I mean legitimate pieces, and we'll have to see. Again, it's the value, what you get. If someone called you, because don't forget, Breece Hall was a second-round pick. If someone called you and I don't think no one's offering a first-round pick for a running back, but if someone offered you a second, I'd consider it. If someone offered you early day, like a fourth round pick, but a really good young controllable player under contract, I'd also look at that as well. But I'm curious to see, because from all intents and purposes, it doesn't seem like there is a market for Breece. There isn't like the Jets. I feel they were looking, there would be hints. And the fact that we haven't gotten any hints, I think is very telling. To me, if Breece would get traded, I almost feel like it would be a mid-season trade where they feel they're in a good enough position and they maybe don't need him. And don't forget, too, Breece is right now probably the second best receiver on this team. So if you want to address the passing game, I think Breece Hall is a really good receiver. I think if you could use him more as a slot receiver next year, too, that could be a solution to address the wide receiving and the pass catching problems that they have as well. But I do think that this is something to keep an eye on, because Joe Tippmann, don't forget, as a rookie, was a really good, damn good guard. And especially at 6'6", it's hard for him to get that leverage as a center. And it could be an interesting case. Maybe this is a coaching staff that sees it, AVT as a better tackle than a guard, and maybe Tippmann is a better guard than center. If that's the case, I think the Jets have to be open to any possibility to improving this team. And especially now with the new regime, they're going to have a fresh set of eyes. They're going to go back through the tape. They're going to watch. Maybe they viewed the snaps as a big issue with Tippmann and feel that he's a better guard. Maybe they're going to look at AVT and say, you know what, we really think you can make the move to tackle. And maybe they tell him privately, look, AVT, we really want to keep you, but only as a tackle. And if by some chance we don't keep you as a tackle, but you play really well as a tackle next year, you're going to have a lot better market in free agency as a right tackle. Yeah, Kev, I disagree with that a little bit. Don't forget, Saquon was a free agent. The Eagles only had to give him money. They didn't have to give him they just had to give him money. With Breece Hall, if you're trading for Breece Hall, you're giving two things. You're likely giving him a contract, money, and you're giving up capital. Now, if the Cowboys called, I mean, I would try to take advantage of them, but if they offered me the second round pick for Breece, the weird thing too is, like I keep saying, if a team's going to offer me a trade and it's for picks, I would rather have them in next year's draft, because I just think next year's draft is a deeper draft. But we are going to have a lot more content on this channel. More mock drafts for Mock Draft Monday are coming. We'll have the 7-rounders after free agency. And of course, with free agency just around the corner, we'll look at some of the key targets for the Jets. We'll talk about reacting to the players that they sign. And of course, we will bring in some more Jets experts to break down the combine and everything around it. But if you're new to the channel, make sure to give us a like and subscribe so you don't miss any of our content on the New York Jets. You can follow us on social media at the handle Rich Sports Talk. And if you'd like to make a donation, use that super chat feature at any time to help the channel grow. But the big thing too is, guys, do not forget to check out the community page. We will have weekly polls in there and hear what you want to say. And look, if you're joining us after the live stream and you have a great comment or idea for a future video, put in those comments below. I read them all and I will check in on them and make sure that you are seen. Again, guys, thank you so much for joining us here today. We'll see you next time on Rich Sports Talk.